Good evening. Welcome to this week's edition of Tuesday Night. Last week we spoke to Steve Weston, an ecologist, about the decay of the ozone layer. Tonight our guest is Ed Thomas. Ed is an assistant professor of physical education at Northern Illinois University. Ed teaches martial arts, stress management, and also general fitness. He has studied almost continuously for 30 years at the university level, and Ed is also a Fulbright scholar, having studied in 4 different nations, including Burma, Korea, Thailand, and Germany. We are both excited and honored to have Mr. Thomas as our guest this evening. And our topic this evening will sort of be a free-flowing discussion. And so we will cover a wide range of areas, so please bear with us this evening. And let's go to the heart of the matter. You would think that America is fit. I mean, with large concentration on health diets and on exercise, there's millions of corporate dollars and also personal dollars that have been spent and are being spent on this health craze, you would say. Why is America so unfit still?
It's a good question, Rob, and it's a big question. I brought this diagram tonight so we can look at it a little closer. Every society, an island nation separated from all nations, will have a body of knowledge we would call education of the physical and education through the physical. Of the physical is the way a society learns to move. As we grow, we learn to walk, talk, run, jump. Even speaking is a physical technique. Breathing is a physical technique. This of the physical then produces what we would call an education through the physical. What happens to the society by learning it this certain way? Well, of course, we would hope that we would develop courage, tenacity, productivity, benevolence, wisdom, self-discipline, beauty. But we know that this operates on a continuum. We know that some cultures move better than others. If we take this concept, and by the way, it has a natural and an artificial dimension. Natural is what we're doing now. We're moving. We're speaking. Artificial is what we do in our educational process, remembering that education has 3 dimensions: the motor, our bodies, the mind, the cognitive, and the affective, our emotions. So the body is 1/3 of this educational formula. If we take this now and tilt this onto its side, we'll see that this concept we will call physical education, which is represented by this box, has 3 content areas. No matter where we go, we will find that we could divide the content of physical education into what we would call restorative, which we could define as techniques that bring the body back toward harmony and compensate for the stress of daily life. Martial techniques allow an individual to respond to external aggression. Pedagogical, we would define as sports, games, theoretical bodies of knowledge, and dance. On the other side, we have motivation. We ask ourselves, what drives people as they learn, as they teach, as they go through life? Well, we know now, Maslow's hierarchy or cutting-edge psychology suggests to us that we are more than trained apes or Freudian-based entities. We have our personal needs. We all want shelter, clothing. We want to avoid pain. As we grow, though, we find that we can immerse ourselves in the needs of others. Maybe in the middle of this, we would have ourselves immersed in the needs of our nation. As we grow, we can become immersed in the needs of our world. And as we grow even more, we can reach a spiritual level. We can understand that beyond life itself, there's something else going on that we're a part of. So we see then the content and the motivation creates 9 categories. Well, the difficulty arises when this relationship gets off balance, because you notice that physical culture comes from the Latin cultus, which means the search for and the celebration of the unknown. It's that which is beyond the common mind. It balances precariously upon a concept that we call leisure, a time when our basic needs are met. The Greek word was skole, the Latin was schola, and the English became school. So suddenly the school takes on this extraordinary cultural value in that it is the time of leisure to seek the unknown. And you notice the balance is precarious. If this gets off balance, the culture will begin to die. We will find a lack of productivity, a sense of loss of direction. We have been operating right here, well, at least for the last 40 years. During the Cold War, we moved up into here. We've been playing sports and games. We've been learning bodies of knowledge and dancing. But we've been primarily motivated on the personal level. What's in it for ourselves? During the Cold War, we moved up here. We were playing softball for defense, I guess you'd say, and we know that it hasn't worked, and it probably won't. A well-developed hierarchy or a well-developed paradigm would see a high value on the spiritual, then the global, then the national, and finally to the personal. And that in a nutshell explains, from the real philosophical high ground, what's happened. What's happened.
Wow. That's a deep subject to undertake and a deep understanding. Where did the basis for this kind of explanation come from?
From my personal point of view, my personal experience, I first saw this being used in South Korea in 1968. I had already had some physical education background, and I was there as a soldier. And I noticed that that the content area was well developed. Of course, everyone knows now that Taekwondo is a worldwide phenomenon. But I noticed that as Korea was just beginning to blossom into an economic and cultural power, that these relationships were well established. And of course, this content area appears throughout history. The Greeks had used it. The Chinese had a system of restorative and martial arts. They called it medical and military gymnastics. The Germans used it to rally against Napoleon in 1800s. Per Heinrich Ling, a Swede, developed a similar system in around 1812 in Sweden to rally the youth of its nation and to increase its productivity. It appears over and over again.
Well, as a society, the American society as it is, are we doomed now? I mean, can we still come out of this and move up in this?
The paradigm, since this is an educational paradigm, it all depends on, of course, on the schools. But then the state itself has a responsibility. In the end, it's the state. It's the people who govern the state that decide what will go on in the schools. The state has not traditionally provided for the martial and restorative training of youth. We have focused our emphasis on the pedagogical, as we've already discussed. It's a tough call. I think we can. I've seen it happen in other nations. I have personally seen great changes take place in a short time. And I would think within 3 years, if a school somewhere would take on a rational approach to the paradigm, I think if the model was set, others would follow.
Well, you talk about the fact that the state needs to take over and we need to put it into a school. What level as far as education?
Of course, we need to teach teachers.
Okay.
We need to touch the individuals who will be touching others. So I would say, though, that when Per Heinrich Ling had to go to the military and to the government because the schools were sluggish then and they're sluggish now. Higher education, PE, is fairly sluggish.
Great. Yeah. That's an interesting discussion. I'm sure that we could spend a lot more time on that, and 7 minutes or 10 minutes wasn't a lot to put into it, but we appreciate you coming tonight very much.
Thank you, Rob.
That's all for tonight's edition of Tuesday Night. Again, I'd like to thank our guest, Mr. Ed Thomas, for being with us tonight. Now, please join us next week for an expanded edition of Tuesday Night when our guest will be Paul Scanlon, a local artist, and Kevin Alm, whose hobby is collecting jobs. I'm Rob Howell. I'll see you next week.